I always believed that weddings reveal the truth about families. Not because of drama, or nerves, or the pressure of the moment, but because people tend to forget their masks when emotions run high. Still, nothing could have prepared me for the way my own wedding day unfolded, the cruelty, the humiliation, the secrets, and ultimately, the unexpected redemption that would change how I saw myself, my husband, and the family I married into. The morning of my wedding began in a charming historic inn in Charleston, South Carolina. The bridal suite was filled with natural light pouring through tall windows framed by sheer curtains that fluttered softly in the ocean breeze. My bridesmaids were drinking mimosas, laughing, fixing their hair, and helping me with the final touches. The room smelled faintly of lavender from the diffuser we had brought. It should have been a perfect moment. But perfection shattered the moment the door swung open and my mother-in-law walked in. I didn't hear her heels click against the hardwood floor. I didn't even hear her breathe. What I heard first, what cut through the soft music and cheerful chatter, was her laugh. A short, sharp burst of sound that made everyone freeze. It was the kind of laugh someone uses when they've already judged you and decided the verdict is guilt. Oh my God. She dragged each word out slowly, as if savoring them. Is that really your dress? Every head in the room turned toward me, then toward her. My heart began pounding against my ribs, like it was trying to escape. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, the lace of my grandmother's dress reflecting the sunlight in unexpected patterns. The dress felt like a hug from someone I loved deeply, someone who wasn't there anymore. But my mother-in-law didn't see beauty, she didn't see meaning. She saw a target. It looks like something from a thrift store, she said, stepping further into the room. Actually, no, it looks worse. Like something rejected by a thrift store. The bridesmaids exchanged stunned glances. My maid of honor, Emily, stepped forward and said, "Mrs. Harrington, that's not—" "Please," she snapped, holding up a hand. "Someone has to be honest. This dress is embarrassing. My son deserves better on his wedding day." My lungs constricted and I felt an immediate sting behind my eyes. My mother-in-law circled me like a shark assessing prey. "Haven't you ever heard of taste? Or is this some kind of joke I'm not understanding?" My voice came out small. "It was my grandmother's." "Well, it should have stayed in her attic," she said. "You don't belong here wearing that. You don't belong here." That sentence was a knife. A phrase she had used before in subtler ways, but never like this. Never with that level of disgust. She had always found ways to undermine me, questioning my background, my job, my family, my choices, but this was open warfare. I felt myself shrinking, curling inward, wanting to disappear. My hands trembled as I tried to smooth the lace, but it suddenly looked different in the mirror, dingy old, wrong when just moments earlier, it looked perfect. "This is my wedding day," I whispered. "Why are you doing this?" Her smile turned cruel. "Because someone has to maintain standards." Emily stepped between us. "Mrs. Harrington, please leave." "Gladly," she said, spinning on her heel. "But don't say I didn't warn you when people start whispering." She left the room as abruptly as she entered. But the damage remained. I stood frozen in front of the mirror, my chest rising and falling unevenly. I wanted to rip the dress off. I wanted to scream. I wanted my grandmother. But instead, I closed my eyes and forced myself to breathe. "You look beautiful," Emily said softly. "Don't let her ruin this." I nodded, but I didn't believe her, not fully. "Not yet." Moments later, the wedding coordinator knocked gently. "It's time. Time. Time to walk toward a ceremony clouded by humiliation, rumors, and judgment my mother-in-law had already unleashed like poison." The hallway outside the suite felt colder than it should. My bridesmaids walked ahead of me, their dresses a soft blush pink that contrasted beautifully against the warm tones of the wooden floors. The music began. A slow violin piece that was supposed to soothe my nerves, but instead made the tightness in my chest worse. When the doors to the courtyard opened, a wave of murmurs hit me like a physical force. Dozens of pairs of eyes scanned my dress, then my face, then whispered into nearby ears. I saw someone's eyebrows lift. Another woman smirked behind her hand. A man shook his head gently, as though quietly judging the choice. Some of the whispers reached me. Is that vintage or just old? Why would she wear that? She doesn't look like she belongs here. And then I heard it again, her voice. I told you, my mother-in-law whispered loudly to her sister. She's embarrassing the family. My stomach twisted violently. I focused on my fiancé Ethan, who was waiting under an archway adorned with white roses and eucalyptus. His face lit up when he saw me. That look was the only thing holding me together. But behind him stood the minister, an older man with gentle eyes. He wasn't smiling. His gaze flicked between me, my mother-in-law, and the dress. He wasn't just performing a ceremony. He was observing, assessing, absorbing something I didn't understand yet. When I reached the altar, Ethan took my trembling hands. You look breathtaking, he whispered. Thank you, I managed, though it came out thin. The minister opened his book. We should have begun. But he didn't speak. He looked at me again, then at the dress, then at my mother-in-law. Then he closed the book slowly. Before we start, he said, projecting his voice across the courtyard, I need to share something important. A ripple of confusion spread among the guests. Ethan whispered, What is he doing? I shook my head. I had no idea. The minister stepped closer to me. When I saw the bride walk in, I recognized something. Something I have not seen in years. My mother-in-law muttered, Here we go, rolling her eyes. The minister continued. I have seen this lace before. Silence. Cold, absolute silence. He touched the edge of the sleeve gently. This lace belonged to a woman who saved my family. When I was a boy, we had nothing. My father had left. My mother struggled. I was wearing shoes with holes in them. And one winter night, a woman came to our door with clothes, food, and fabric she had been saving for her future grandchildren. She told my mother, kindness never dies. It waits for its moment. My eyes filled instantly. The minister swallowed hard. Your grandmother. She saved us. My heart clenched so tightly it hurt. I covered my mouth, trying not to sob. Ethan turned to me in amazement, then back to the minister. But the minister wasn't done. He looked directly at my mother-in-law. And years later, your grandmother helped another young mother. A mother who had just moved to Charleston, struggling to survive with her little boy. She donated clothes, food, money, even some of the same lace. Guests gasped. Ethan took a sharp breath. The minister's voice softened. That mother? Was you. My mother-in-law's face drained of color. She looked like someone had punched the air from her lung. Tears pooled in her eyes. Ethan stared at her. Mom, why didn't you tell me? She shook her head slowly. I didn't think he would remember. I didn't want you to know how desperate I was. How poor. The minister nodded. You begged my mother not to tell anyone. You said you wanted to build a new identity. One without shame. My mother-in-law's tears spilled. Her mascara smudged. She looked nothing like the composed woman who had insulted me hours earlier. I was so scared, she whispered. I didn't want anyone to know. When I saw the dress, all those memories I buried. They came back. I felt exposed, weak, and I took it out on you. Her voice cracked on the last word. I stood frozen, unable to move. The humiliation I felt was tangled now with a new emotion, understanding. Not forgiveness, but comprehension of where her cruelty came from. Ethan's voice trembled. So you hated her because she reminded you of what you used to be? No, she cried. I didn't hate her. I hated myself. The words hung in the air like fragile glass. The minister stepped back slightly. What we reject in others is often what we fear within ourselves. His voice carried a weight that silenced everyone. I felt my knees weaken. Ethan caught me gently, holding my hands tighter. The entire ceremony pastime itself seemed to hold its breath. This wasn't about the dress. It was about shame, generational pain, secrets, identity, and the way unresolved wounds explode in the most unexpected ways. My mother-in-law collapsed into sobs. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You didn't deserve any of it." I swallowed hard, my throat burning. "No," I said quietly. "I didn't." The minister looked at me with compassion. "The next step belongs to the bride. You may take a moment. You may pause the ceremony. You may do whatever you feel is right." Every eye turned to me. Ethan looked terrified of losing me. My mother-in-law looked terrified of losing her son. And I looked down at the lace on my dress, the same lace that had touched so many lives, that had carried stories of kindness through generations. I closed my eyes and allowed myself to feel everything that needed to be felt: anger, hurt, confusion, compassion, sadness, strength. Then I opened my eyes and said, with a voice steadier than I expected, "We continue." Ethan exhaled in relief, nearly collapsing with emotion. My mother-in-law sobbed harder, covering her face. The minister smiled softly and reopened his book. The ceremony transformed. It no longer felt rigid or artificial. It felt real, human, imperfect, honest. When Ethan and I exchanged vows, his voice shook. "I promise to always protect your heart," he said, tears in his eyes. Guests cried openly. And when he kissed me, it felt like sealing not just a marriage, but a new beginning. At the reception, people kept approaching to say how moved they were, how powerful the ceremony had been, how they had never seen such raw honesty at a wedding. But my mother-in-law kept her distant shoulders drawn in, eyes red, clearly ashamed. It took almost an hour before she approached me. She touched my sleeve lightly. "Your grandmother saved me," she whispered. "I forgot who I was before I built this. Fakade, I'm so sorry for what I did today. I will spend the rest of my life making it right, if you let me." I didn't know what to say. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was ready to try. And that was enough. That night, as the lights dimmed and Ethan held me close on the dance floor, I realized something profound. Truth has a strange timing. It reveals itself when it must not, when it's comfortable. And sometimes, kindness returns through unexpected people, wearing unexpected clothing, at unexpected moments. When the night was ending and people were leaving, I felt compelled to share this story, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. And real stories build bridges. Later, as I replayed the entire day in my mind, I knew this moment would stay with me forever. The humiliation, the revelation, the transformation, the reconciliation, and the truth that my grandmother's lace carried a legacy far deeper than I ever realized. The reception hall glowed with warm golden lights strung between wooden beams, their soft reflections bouncing off the vintage chandeliers overhead. Guests mingled near the bar, sipping cocktails, while others drifted toward the dance floor, where the DJ played mellow jazz. The contrast between the chaos of the ceremony and the peace of the reception was almost surreal, and I felt myself struggling to ground my emotions. Everything that had happened only hours earlier seemed like a dream, an exhausting, emotionally charged dream that left me both drained and strangely awakened. Ethan placed his hand on the small of my back and whispered, "Do you need a break? We could sneak away for a few minutes." I shook my head. "I'm okay. I think I want to be here with everyone." I looked around the room. "I don't want to hide from any of this." He nodded softly, his eyes warm and full of admiration. "You're incredible, you know that." I smiled faintly. "I don't feel incredible. You are," he insisted. "Most people would have walked away from the altar today." I swallowed hard. I thought about it. His expression shifted sadness, fear, then gratitude. But you stayed. I stayed because I love you, I said, and because walking away wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't heal anything. He kissed my forehead, his hands resting gently on my waist. Whatever happens with my mom, I promise you'll never have to deal with it alone again. I nodded, letting myself lean into him briefly before another relative approached to congratulate us. For the next hour, we were pulled in every direction: photos, dancing, toasts, hugs, half-drunken speeches from groomsmen who had no business holding microphones. But through all of it, my mother-in-law remained distant. Every time our eyes met, she looked away quickly, her posture closed, her gaze heavy with regret. She wasn't hiding out of contempt anymore. She was hiding out of shame. Eventually, Ethan noticed too. She's been sitting alone for 20 minutes, he murmured. You don't have to talk to her, but I think she's waiting for something. I sighed deeply. Maybe I should. Are you sure? He asked. You've been through enough today. I know, I said. But leaving it unresolved feels worse, so I excused myself from a conversation with two cousins and walked toward the quiet corner where she sat. She didn't see me at first. Her head was down, her hands twisted together tightly. When she finally lifted her gaze and realized I was approaching, she stood abruptly, wiping at her eyes even though there were no visible tears. Can we talk? I asked softly. She nodded but didn't speak. I guided her toward the small lounge area near the back of the hall, away from the music and chatter. We sat beside each other on a plush velvet couch. She didn't look at me at first. Her shoulders were tense, her breath shallow, as though bracing herself for a blow. I want to understand, I said quietly. She closed her eyes. I don't deserve your kindness. This isn't about deserving, I replied. She hesitated, then exhaled shakily. I've spent years building this image of who I thought I needed to be. This polished, respected, admired woman who didn't depend on anyone. Her fingers trembled, but that wasn't who I always was. I came from nothing. I was desperate when Ethan was a baby. I was ashamed. I never wanted him to know. What were you afraid of? I asked. That he would see me as a failure, she whispered. That he would think less of me. That the world would. She paused, her voice breaking. And when I saw your dress, it reminded me of the one act of charity that kept me alive. The lace, the pattern, everything. It was like my past came rushing back, and instead of facing it, I lashed out. My throat tightened. At me, yes. She swallowed hard. I couldn't stomach the idea of anyone knowing I wasn't always the woman I pretend to be. So I turned my shame into cruelty. You became the easiest target. Her confession was raw, stripped of the arrogance she had worn earlier like armor. She looked smaller now, more human. Broken in places she has spent decades trying to hide. I won't pretend it didn't hurt, I said, my voice quiet but steady. Because it did. More than you'll ever know. She nodded slowly. I believe you. And I'm so sorry. I let her apology sit in the space between us. It didn't erase the pain, but it softened the edges. After a long moment, I said, what happened today? It can't happen again. If we're going to be a family, there has to be honesty. And respect. She nodded again, a tear finally slipping down her cheek. I want that. I want a chance to be better. If you'll let me earn it. I will, I said. But it's going to take time. I understand, she whispered. And I'll be patient. When we returned to the lively part of the reception, something in the air felt different, lighter, calmer. I saw Ethan watch us from across the room with cautious hope, as though afraid to assume anything but desperate to believe reconciliation was possible. Hours passed and slowly the tension faded. Guests danced. Children twirled around centerpieces. Elderly relatives shared stories no one had asked for. It began to feel like a real celebration, messy, imperfect, but filled with genuine connection. Later that night, When the DJ announced the last dance, Ethan pulled me close. The music softened to a slow, intimate melody. Guests formed a quiet, loose circle around us, watching with tender smiles as we swayed beneath the warm lights. "You were incredible today," Ethan whispered into my hair. "I don't feel incredible," I murmured. "I feel exhausted," he chuckled softly. "Okay, maybe you're both." I rested my cheek against his chest. "I'm glad we didn't walk away." "Me too," he said. "I'll never forget today." "Neither will I said quietly. As we danced, my mother-in-law stood near the edge of the circle, watching us with a softened expression. There was still sadness in her eyes, but also something new: humility, gratitude, a willingness to change. And I realized then that the ceremony wasn't the end of her story. Or mine. It was just the moment everything finally came into the light. When the dance ended, guests clapped and cheered. The night began to wind down. Our send-off was filled with sparklers and laughter, and despite everything, I felt something close to peace settling inside me. Later, as Ethan carried me over the threshold of our hotel suite, both of us breathless with laughter and relief, I collapsed onto the bed, staring up at the ceiling. "I can't believe everything that happened today," I said. He lay beside me, propping himself on his elbow. "I know. It was overwhelming." "Do you think your mom meant what she said?" I asked. "I think she did," he said carefully. "But change won't happen overnight." "I know," I said. "But I'm willing to try." "You're stronger than anyone I've ever known," he said gently. I smiled faintly. "I don't feel strong. I feel like I barely held myself together." "That's what strength is," he replied. "Not pretending you're fine, but choosing to keep going even when everything inside you wants to run." His words warmed something deep inside me. As we lay together in the quiet of the room, I replayed the entire day: the insults, the humiliation, the truth revealed, the tears, the reconciliation, the vows. It struck me then how life has a strange way of aligning moments, not always softly, not always kindly, but always purposefully. The dress I wore wasn't just my grandmother's. It was a thread woven through generations, carrying lessons with it. That kindness echoes, that truth surfaces, that what we hide eventually reveals itself through circumstances we never expect. My grandmother used to say something when I was little, something I never really understood until now. What you hold in your heart shapes what you see in the world. And standing under the courtyard arch earlier that day, hearing the minister unravel decades of secrets stitched into the lace I wore, I finally understood. My mother-in-law's cruelty wasn't about me. It was about the shame she carried. And the moment she faced it, the moment she allowed light to touch it, everything shifted, not instantly, not perfectly, but inevitably. The next morning, I woke up before Ethan. I slipped out of bed quietly and walked onto the hotel balcony. The Charleston sun was just rising, painting the sky in soft pink and gold. The city felt different, calmer, almost sacred. As the breeze brushed against my skin, I reflected on everything that had happened. The humiliation, the truth, the healing. And I felt gratitude not for the pain, but for what the pain revealed. Life has a way of bringing balance, even when the process is painful. What is hidden becomes visible. What is denied becomes undeniable. What is buried rises when the moment is right. Later, as I share this moment with you, I want to say thank you for listening to my story. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear if you've ever faced something similar on an important day. And if this story touched you, you can support the channel with a small gesture. The Buy Me a Coffee link is in the description. Your kindness helps keep these stories alive. Looking back, I see now that my wedding day wasn't ruined. It was revealed. And in that revelation came something deeper than perfection. Truth. The kind of truth that heals. The kind of truth that frees. The kind of truth that teaches you that what you carry inside, love, fear, shame, hope, then truly shows itself in the world around you. And because of that, my wedding day became something far more meaningful than I ever imagined. It became the day my family truly began.